Showing on Law Weekly today, Lagos State again speaks out against domestic violence. The governor chose his weight behind ending gender-based crimes. There's also a feature on the judge compulsorily retired by the president, as some lawyers share their thoughts on the issue. Plus our interview segment with former Attorney General and Commissioner for Justice in Ekiti State, Olawale Fakonda, on justice sector reforms. Hello, welcome to Law Weekly on Channels Television. I am Shola Shiele. Let's begin straight away with our report on the efforts by the Lagos State government to end domestic violence in the state.
He slapped me across the face one time, as he didn't like the food that I cooked. I was dumbfounded, but accepted his apologies.
I'm sorry, dear. I had a stressful day at work.
This is just a play, but sadly it mirrors the everyday life and reality of some people, mostly women, children, the weak and the vulnerable in our society. Domestic violence is one of the most pervasive and heinous violations of human rights in the world. It's also one of the least prosecuted crimes and one of the greatest threats to lasting peace and development. The need to inspire and encourage all stakeholders to increase their efforts to bring succor to victims and ultimately eradicate this menace in Lagos is what has brought this eminent gathering together. This dinner was convened by the Governor of Lagos, Mr. Akinwumi Ambode, at the instance of the Lagos State Domestic and Sexual Violence Response Team. The Governor was unavoidably absent, but he was well represented by the Deputy Governor, Dr. Idiat Oluranti Adebule. The state's Attorney General and Commissioner for Justice, Mr. Adeniji Kazim, in his welcome address, touched on the reason for the dinner.
As we may be aware, the Lagos State Domestic and Sexual Violence Response Team was established in September 2014 to increase victim safety and offender responsibility by providing a cross-jurisdictional response which is uniform in approach in responding to all forms of sexual and gender-based violence crimes, namely rape, defilement, child abuse, domestic violence, sexual assault, etc. in Lagos State. Statistics have revealed that individuals of every tribe, ethnic group, faith, and background face domestic violence, but some communities are disproportionately affected. In order to combat the prevalence of domestic violence and sexual assault, the state government is giving priority for adequate reporting and to prosecute the reported cases timeously. I think we can all agree that the time for complacency is long gone. The silence associated with the violence against women and children is well on the way to being broken. And now is the time for stronger action. This is of utmost importance as this administration of His Excellency Governor Akinwumi Ambode has declared a zero tolerance for sexual and gender-based violence.
In furtherance of this zero tolerance, the Domestic and Sexual Violence Response Team in the month of October, which is internationally recognized as the Domestic Violence Awareness Month, embarked on various awareness campaigns, roadwalks, trainings and symposium. And this dinner is the last activity to celebrate the modest achievements recorded and get the buy-in of more stakeholders. Honorable Fumilayo Tejuosho sponsored the passage of the Domestic Violence Bill into law in Lagos and gives more insight into why ending this menace requires the collaboration of all.
It took me 4 years to pass the bill into law because of the misconception that it is only a gender bill and that it is only a concern for women. People actually confuse domestic violence as a gender issue, but it's not the case. Men also suffer abuse. We know that the domestic violence law actually is trying to safeguard the marriage. We know that there are laws already in Lagos State and Nigeria as a whole that talk about violence And we must appreciate that domestic violence is violence. And we need to continue to remove the veil on domestic violence.
The Deputy Governor speaks about the measures the government is putting in place to end domestic violence.
Ending domestic violence cannot be achieved through legislation alone. What is needed is a sustained, coordinated, and multi-level approach across all sectors of society, particularly police, health, justice, education, and social services. And these actions must be consistent over a period of time. The good news is we know what to do. We are clear on our goals. We will tackle this menace with every potential of energy and resources we possess. However, the most important battle we face is with the culture towards these issues and its flaws, culture cut across all strata of the society, from the culture of silence with victims to the culture of always wanting to ignore or sweep under the carpet the incidences of domestic violence.
Indeed, the culture of silence cannot be allowed to continue, and that's one reason why the team recognized and commended certain individuals and organizations who are proactive in reporting and supporting the government's efforts in ending domestic violence. And so the message is, rape is a crime, domestic violence is a crime, and we all must report it.
Away from that report, here's a quick recap of some other legal stories we're keeping our eyes on.
Hearing in the suit filed by the former National Security Advisor, Colonel Sambo Dasuki, seeking an enforcement of the order of a federal high court granting him permission to travel overseas for medical treatment, has been fixed for November 23rd. The date for the hearing was fixed after the court adjourned to give the Attorney General of the Federation, Abubakar Malami, time to study the case file, having just been sworn into office. As at its last sitting, the court had summoned the AGF to explain why the order was being flouted. Meanwhile, the Attorney General of the Federation has been speaking about the prosecution of high-profile corruption cases involving public officers. After assuming office last week, Thursday, Mr. Abubakar Malami, at a news conference in Abuja, the Federal Capital Territory, advised judicial officers to live above board. He said the government will probe high-profile corruption cases and move against investigators and prosecutors who may have compromised such cases. The former chairman of the Economic and Financial Crimes Commission, EFCC, Mr. Ibrahim Lamode, has challenged the powers of the Senate and the Senate Committee on Ethics, Privileges and Public Petition to invite him to appear before them. He has filed a suit in court, insisting that by virtue of Section 88 and 89 of the 1999 Constitution, the Senate lacks the power to invite him to appear before them in relation to issues concerning an office he already vacated. He is also seeking an order of injunction against the Inspector General of Police and the Department of State Service, restraining them from executing any warrant of arrest issued by the Senate. No date has been fixed for the hearing of the suit. And we round off with the news that the tribunal inquiring into the October 12 civil disturbances in the Lekki Free Trade Zone has started sitting in Lagos. The disturbances sadly led to the disruption of business activities and the death of the managing director of the Lekki Free Trade Zone, Mr. Tajuddin Disu. The chairman of the tribunal said in line with the terms of reference of the tribunal, individuals, groups, stakeholders, host communities, and other interested members of the public can submit memoranda to assist the tribunal in its quest to unravel the remote and immediate causes of the October 12 incident. The tribunal will also prefer solutions that will forestall a recurrence of such incidents and make necessary recommendations to the state government based on its findings. The Attorney General and Commissioner for Justice in the state, Mr. Adeniji Kazim, urged the tribunal to be fearless and give everyone a chance to ventilate their observations and suggestions.
Welcome back. President Muhammadu Buhari last week approved the compulsory retirement from office of Honorable Justice Lambo Akombi of the Federal High Court, Port Harcourt Division. The judge was sent on compulsory retirement with immediate effect after the National Judicial Council (NJC) suspended him for misconduct and recommended his retirement to the president. The acting director of information of the NJC, Mr. Soji Oye, says the council made the recommendation to the president after its 74th meeting held on the 4th and 5th of November. Shell Petroleum Company of Nigeria had made several allegations against Justice Akombi, which were contained in a petition sent to the NJC. The allegations include the unilateral appointment of one Mr. Emeka Nkwo as a referee and valuer in about 3 suits, despite not being proposed by parties in the suits. The judge also heard and concluded a case without dealing with a notice of preliminary objection on the jurisdiction of his court. Justice Akombi also sat on a case in the Federal High Court Yenogua without the fiat of the Chief Judge of the Federal High Court, who had already transferred a new judge to the state. Now, there are those who think that compulsory retirement is not enough punishment for judicial officers who violate their oath of office. Law Weekly spoke to some senior legal practitioners on the issue.
My view is that in proper cases where there has been established, and I mean established, that there has been an infraction, there has been some corrupt enrichment, some inducement or something, then definitely the law should take its course. And the perpetrators, no matter how highly placed, ought to be prosecuted and punished. But the point is, we must be clear, that is where the infraction, the wrongdoing has been properly established. In fact, what we find is oftentimes there are allegations, there is some suspicion, there are surrounding facts that tend to suggest that something untoward may have happened. But either there is a reluctance to properly investigate and reach a conclusion, or there is an inability for want of real evidence to reach that final conclusion. Now, in such cases, what usually happens is an easier way out is arranged. The person is eased out of the system, so to speak. So we do have an ideal which we would all like to see, and that is proper prosecution and a proper conclusion. And that's my personal view.
Since the NJC had sat and they have they are of the view that he violated some rules and all that, so I think that's enough.
But then again, if he's compulsory retired, it does not speak well of him ordinarily. Even the consequence of that compulsory retirement is still high, because it depends on the age of the judge. He becomes almost inactive because he can no longer practice as a lawyer. Neither can he practice as a judge. And sending him on inactive life is also of a consequence. It's enough punishment. I believe that those who are there knows this punishment that will be commensurate to the offense of a judge.
The NJC does not have the prosecutorial powers to prosecute. Now, the anti-graft agencies can, on the basis of the findings of the disciplinary committee, can summon him or call him for investigation. And then when the anti-graft, in their opinion, finds that offense has been established, they cannot approach the court for prosecution. So the works of the NJC ends at summarily dismissing the judicial officer, because NJC do not have the prosecutorial power. They cannot be a judge in their own case. They cannot prosecute. So that is just the duty of the NJC.